So we're still in the Colonial room, and it's quite interesting because again, these are now artists that are living in Australia. These are artists that have immigrated to Australia. Many of them lived here permanently. Some, like Von Gerard, who stayed for 30 years and went back later in life. Okay. But this interesting artist here by the name of Louis Buvelot, he was actually a Swiss-French artist, and he arrived in Australia in 1885. So we're looking at a later kind of artist, and very, very interesting because something different was happening in Europe. There was a most extraordinary change in the tradition of depicting the land. Okay? What that was, and I mentioned that Von Gerard was out sketching the land and would paint these studies back in his studio, in some cases years after. But what was occurring with artists like Louis Buvelot is that they were actually going out into the land and in many instances painting directly from the land. Now that was quite a dramatic shift. Now of course it's influenced by what was happening in Europe, obviously. Okay? There was the Barbizon school. There was also, of course, which you would all be well aware of, Impressionism. Okay? Claude Monet, his important view, Impression Sunrise. Okay, so these artists were highly influenced by what was going on there. This was later to be picked up by another generation of artists, which I'll touch on in the next room. But this is Louis Buvelot, again, the Western District. These artists were going to these locations, waterfalls, water environments, which we're really, also focusing on today. But here, the Wannon Falls in the Western District, and you can see there the beauty of the falls, but also the other point I want to make here is that this was a land for actual recreation too. This is a place of enjoyment, of recreation too. So this is again informing the early settlers in Australia of this. Very, very important. And how that occurs, and it's not perhaps so obvious from seeing the work as you're seeing it, but you can see a group of tourists here. They're standing on a rocky outcrop and they're taking in the freshness of the land. Okay? So these paintings actually encouraged people to go into the land, okay, to seek out these beautiful locations. And indeed, it certainly worked. Okay? Above here, and I guess there's a bit of a personal attachment to the work above here because that's where I was born, Bacchus Marsh, and it shows the Werribee Gorge. The Werribee Gorge also, if you haven't been there at any point, I think you need to try to get there. It is a most magnificent, I see it as one of Victoria's best kept secrets because, it's just extraordinary. Artists go there, artists, like Buvelot, he would have been there, tramping around here with his sketchbooks, also his kit with his palette and his paintbrushes, and he would be painting in many cases directly from the spot to capture the land. Okay, but also you can see that there's changes occurring here. You can see the changes in the application of paint. You can see the changes also, they're getting closer up now. Okay, there's still a sense of the panorama, there's still a sense of the distant view. Okay, but they're really getting close up here. You can see that they're honing in on a particular location. You also see the land as well as a place for tourism, to enjoy this land. You also see that it's being put to use for other purposes, agriculture. You can see that there's pastures here. You can see cattle grazing likewise in the Bacchus Marsh picture here too. So this artist also, again, Louis Buvelot, remember that name, really important artist who influenced another generation of artists, which I will talk about later. Now, just one more point before we move on. This room, of course, demonstrates that the gallery had changed its collecting policy. It was now collecting Australian art. Okay, we're settled and here we are collecting Australian art. Not so much the focus anymore of international art.